It used to be that three things in life were certain: death, taxes, and a new Ridge Racer game releasing alongside the launch of a new console. Sadly, only the first two remain true nowadays, as the last time a new Ridge Racer game heralded a console's arrival was 2006's Ridge Racer 7 for the PlayStation 3. But now, in a rather amusing full-circle moment nearly 20 years later, Ridge Racer has finally returned to usher in the Nintendo Switch 2's arrival as part of its launch lineup. Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Racer is a fresh port of the very first Ridge Racer game, and also the first 3D title in Hamster Corporation's new Arcade Archives 2 series, in this case emulating Namco's System 22 arcade hardware. Okay, so it's not a new Ridge Racer, far from it being the first game in the series, but given modern Bandai Namco's total abandonment of the IP nowadays, this and potentially other classic re-releases in the future are the closest we're likely to get to one, and for long-starving Ridge Racer fans, that might have to be enough. So what you're getting here is a modern port of the original Ridge Racer, with the usual Arcade Archives feature set of Original Mode, High Score Mode, and Caravan Mode, as well as a new Arcade Archives 2 exclusive Time Attack Mode. Original Mode is exactly what the name implies, letting you play the original game with a variety of options and settings to tweak the game to your liking, such as adjusting difficulty levels and the number of laps required to complete a race. There are also 4 save slots and a rewind feature included in Original Mode, so you can save and reload into various instances of a race, or rewind to undo mistakes if you want. The other 3 modes are more competition-focused, including support for online leaderboards, so the difficulty-related options and multiple save slots naturally aren't available in them. High Score Mode challenges you to complete a single race as quickly as possible. Caravan Mode tasks you with covering as much ground as you can in 5 minutes, with your quote-unquote mileage score climbing higher the further you go, and Time Attack Mode has you completing 4 races back-to-back as you aim for your best time. Now all this might sound like a lot, but in practice I've found that these 3 competitive modes feel functionally almost identical to one another. Of the 3, Caravan Mode sticks out the most in a relative sense for ever so slightly changing the rules of the game, but unless you're really, and I mean really, into chasing high scores and best times on leaderboards, you'll likely find yourself mainly sticking to Original Mode. Whichever modes you play though, one thing remains true across them all. Ridge Racer's gameplay holds up extremely well, and it's still clear to see all these years later why this game left such an indelible mark on the genre of arcade racers, and how it was able to spawn a series all its own. On the surface, it may look for all the world like your typical arcade racer, but as they say, the devil's in the details, and in this case, that detail is drifting. Now, drifting is obviously an extremely common mechanic in arcade racers these days, but no other game has ever handled it quite like Ridge Racer. It takes a little getting used to, but it feels immensely rewarding and even euphoric at times once you really get a feel for it. Essentially, the way drifting works in Ridge Racer is that you take your foot, or in this case thumb, off the gas heading into a tight corner, thereby slowing down a bit. Then, after you start leaning into the corner with the accelerator off, you hit the gas again, and suddenly you'll find yourself drifting around the corner with all the frictionless grace of an F-Zero machine. Is it realistic? Not in the slightest. Is it massively satisfying and rewarding to pull off at high speeds? Hell yes it is, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This very particular approach to drifting is a core element of the series' lasting appeal, and while later games in the series would iterate on and polish it further, even in this early state it tickles my brain's pleasure center in a way that's hard to properly describe. It just feels good. It turns out the OG Ridge Racer also holds up on the presentation front. It's obviously a game of its era, that era being 1993 in this case, but its early 3D visuals blend well with the vivid, brightly colored scenery whizzing by as you drift around hairpin corners. And the performance is on point too. The soundtrack, delightfully evocative of 90s dance music, is another high point. While there isn't very much to choose from, with only 6 tracks available in the original game, everything that is here slaps. And as is the norm for retro re-releases like this, there are also a bunch of screen size options, filters, and other visual effects to mess around with. They're hardly necessary, but I was particularly impressed by the options for simulating the scan lines and noise that were so prevalent in arcade screens of the time. So this all pretty much seems like a slam dunk, right? Well, a word of caution. While Ridge Racer the First definitely holds up and this is a rock-solid port of it, this is not a game that was ever known for its abundance of content. Quite the contrary, in fact. The original game was rather limited in scope, and there's just not very much to see here. For example, there's only a single track to race on, and you take one of only 2 routes through it depending on the selected difficulty level. The time of day does at least change as you race, so there's that, but it's still just the one singular track. There's also only one playable vehicle, and naturally no unlockables to speak of. Multiplayer is also non-existent, online or otherwise. Now obviously, this makes perfect sense in the context of the original game being a single-player arcade experience, but what I'm getting at here is that you really need to love Ridge Racer, or be open to the idea of loving it, to get the most bang for your buck here. The $17 price point places it just outside of impulse buy territory in my opinion, especially for a game with so little content by today's standards. I'm not saying it isn't worth it, and a game's value relative to its price is a very subjective thing anyway, but it's important that you know what you're getting into here. With just a single track and vehicle on offer, the OG Ridge Racer leans very heavily on its replayability, and replayable it certainly is, but if you're looking for a deep well of content and stuff to unlock, you won't find them here. Those potential concerns aside, there's just something extremely cool about having the first Ridge Racer playable on modern hardware, and for hardcore fans of the series like myself, I think picking up the Arcade Archives 2 version is a no-brainer. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The game really holds up well and plays like a charm both in TV and handheld mode, and the fun modern trappings like rewind and the various optional visual filters and effects help breathe a little new life into it. At the same time, the 3 competitive modes feel kind of samey and undercooked, and the lack of content relative to the $17 price point may understandably be a concern for some. But if you just love arcade racers or have a Ridge Racer shaped hole in your heart like I do, this is an easy to recommend addition to your Switch 2 launch library. Hey, as always, thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoy what we do here at GVG, make sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to our channel, as every little bit really does help. And if you want even more GVG content, make sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming, where we offer perks like early access to new content and live audience participation as we record videos behind the scenes while you watch. Regardless, we genuinely appreciate your support in whatever form it takes, and we'll see you next time.